I am not great at social media. I'll log on to Instagram or TikTok with a very specific purpose, a thing to do, and then I get distracted. I avoid my inbox messages because honestly, how many inboxes can one person be expected to be responsible for? And sometimes I just don't post or even go on the app for days at a time, which is fine if you're a person and less fine if you have a podcast you're trying to grow. There is, however, one very specific thing that I love to do on social media, and it is, say it with me, ask people what they want me to research or find out for them. A few weeks ago, I did exactly that on Instagram and TikTok, and I got some amazing questions. I love nothing more than an excuse to go down some wild research rabbit holes and search for answers, especially if there is literally anything else I should be doing. So, to kick off Cramped Season 1.5, I am answering some of these questions. Questions like, what do you do when your doctor says your tests are normal? And does the MTHFR gene mutation affect periods? And why are some periods so much more painful than others?
What's happening to your body, we don't know, because we've never really studied the female body. Say it's all in my head, but the research is quite spotty. No, we've never really studied the female body. I go to the doctor to get dismissed. Try losing weight, you're just anxious. That's fine, that's cool, I'm not pissed. Just wait 10 years for a diagnosis. Psychosomatic, you're so dramatic. Hysterical, emotional, hormonal, erratic. Heart disease, chronic fatigue, depression and anxiety. Do you have pain? No, you don't, because we've never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped, the podcast where I try to find answers to my, and others, severe period pain, and then try to understand why those answers are so hard to find. To be honest with you, I didn't set out to make a long-running podcast. I set out to do a 10-episode miniseries to learn some very specific things about my own experience that I thought would also be helpful to the 30% of menstruating people who experience severe period pain. But after a full year of researching, visiting specialists, interviewing experts, and investigating the systems that make it so hard to access information and care for our uteruses, I changed my mind. I have some answers now. My pain, plus a lot of other symptoms, have been caused by my endometriosis this whole time. Which is not like a shocker, because 1 in 10 people with uteruses has endometriosis according to the WHO. But the fact that I'm a textbook endo case with absolutely typical symptoms, and yet it still took 22 years and thousands of dollars paid out of pocket for me even just to get diagnosed, let alone treated, that's pretty radicalizing. So I'm not done. I'm going to keep digging into topics around period pain in what we're calling Season 1.5. Is it Season 2? No, that'll come in the fall and we'll have a whole new topic for you. Season 1.5 will be a little more casual. Episodes will be a little shorter than Season 1. We'll hear from some new experts. I'll call up some new case study guests to tell us about their symptoms and answer their questions. And I'll be researching more questions that I have. But in order to keep making this podcast, we do need your help. We spent all our grant money making Season 1. So if you have found any of this useful, please support us at patreon.com/cramped. Patreon subscribers will get bonus episodes, which will be tutorials and how-tos on things like cycle tracking, herbal tea for cramps, and how to throw your own period party or clam bake, whatever you want to call it. So please just take a second and go subscribe at patreon.com/cramped. Thank you. Now let's do the episode already. Let's answer some questions. Let's go down some rabbit holes. While also remembering that I am not a doctor or a medical expert, I am just a research nerd with a uterus and a microphone. So all of this is just for informational purposes. And if I get something wrong, reach out and let me know in like a chill way. Our first question is actually 2 questions. You get a 2-for-1 here. One is, how to get through an appointment after your doctor says your labs are normal. This comes from Charlie the Bold on Instagram. Second question is, what is normal? Question mark, question mark. Why is everything quote unquote normal according to doctors? Question mark, question mark. And that is from Sarah Shepherd 08 on TikTok. I feel this one in my bones. I spent 20 years getting ultrasounds and being told everything looks normal with no follow-up at all, no next step. These are questions about what is normal. What do they mean when they say your test came back normal, your period is normal? It's so frustrating to know that something is wrong and then to be told, nope, that's normal, when you know that that is not normal for you. And I will also say common doesn't mean normal. Just because something is common, like period pain, doesn't mean that it is normal or not a problem that needs to be solved. I really quick want to quote from Kate Clancy, the biological anthropologist who was our guest on the last episode of season 1. In her amazing book, Period, she talks about the value of averages and how it doesn't really apply to period data. I'm going to paraphrase a bit because I don't want to just read you a paragraph out of her book, but full credit to Kate Clancy. Our medical system needs to have these standards of care. It relies very heavily on calculating averages and probabilities. And in general, this is probably good. Otherwise, each doctor would just have their own opinion of normal, which still happens, but it happens a little less now that we have some standards of care. But when it comes to menstrual cycles, average isn't always a useful thing to have. With menstrual cycles, there's no quote-unquote normal distribution. There's no cluster of data in the middle that tells you that's where almost everybody is, and so that's where you should be or something might be wrong. With menstrual cycle data, it's just literally all over the place. And so, yeah, you can take the average of those numbers, but that average doesn't tell you whether that's healthy or not. And that's where this idea of a quote-unquote normal 28-day cycle comes from. Even though you can have a totally healthy cycle of 24 days or 35 days. And you can also have a really unhealthy cycle of 28 days. That data, the number of days a menstrual cycle is, it doesn't really tell you anything without the context of the rest of this person's cycle and the cycles they've had before. I do feel some empathy for gynecologists. Menstrual cycles are complex. Each person's experience is totally unique. And if you only have 7 or 10 minutes with a patient, it's pretty impossible to get enough context and information to fully understand a patient's situation. So yeah, they lean heavily on data and quote-unquote normal ranges as dictated by averages, because it's the easiest and the quickest way to identify potential problems. Just because your data or your test result is quote-unquote normal or within the normal range that the doctor expected to see, without knowing the context of that result, it can be kind of meaningless. They're averaging out data, and some of the people that are in that average are very different than you. So your normal healthy range might be on the low side, and you might get a result that's on the high side of normal, which for you is too high, but for the doctor, that's within the range of normal. When you go to your doctor, your PCP, or your gynecologist, they might be looking out for the very worst possible things that could be going on. They're trying to keep you from dying. We talked about this a little bit in season 1 with the ER. ER doctors are trying to find out who the people are who are in the most risk of dying and pay the most attention to them. That's their job. That's triaging. Gynecologists and PCPs shouldn't be doing that. We don't think they're doing that, but when they only have a few minutes to spend with you, they're not necessarily going to prioritize your quality of life or things that are bothering you. To them, their job might be to catch when something is going really wrong so that you don't die. So don't let the word normal dismiss you, even if that's what the doctor's trying to do. Maybe the doctor's not worried based on the data, but you are still worried because you have to live in this body 24/7. So if your symptoms are persisting, if the thing that made you go get the test is still happening, follow up. Keep asking questions. Okay, if that test was normal, what's the next test? What else could it be? Now, when it comes to any kind of imaging, like ultrasounds or MRIs, try to get a copy of that you own. That shit is expensive, and you want to have a copy of that ultrasound. Because every time you go see a new doctor, if it's a gynecological issue, a lot of times they're going to want to do an ultrasound. And if you can say, actually, I just got that done 2 months ago, here's a copy, wow, you're going to save yourself some money. It's also really good to be able to compare a new ultrasound image to one from 6 months ago or a year ago. The new ultrasound might show a cyst, and your doctor might say, hey, this could be a problem, but we don't know if it's getting bigger or getting smaller. And if they can look at an ultrasound from 6 months ago or a year ago and it wasn't there, they know it's new. Or if it was there, but it was bigger and it's getting smaller and it's not bothering you, then it's not a problem. Ultrasounds have always been kind of mysterious to me. Like, even if I look at it and the provider is like, there's your ovary, see the follicle? I'm like, yeah, totally. But what I actually see is just a bunch of blobs. But even if someone can find an ovary on an ultrasound, it doesn't mean that they know what else to look for. As I learned with my endometriosis diagnosis, even if one of my many ultrasounds in the past had shown signs of endometriosis, it's possible, it's even likely that my gyno who was reading the ultrasound didn't know what to look for endo. If I had shown that same ultrasound to an endo specialist, they might have been able to see a whole other set of stuff going on. Or maybe not, because endo doesn't always show up on an ultrasound. Don't assume that all gynos speak endo or PCOS or whatever, and do your own research about your results. Nobody is going to care more about this information and how it impacts you and what it means than you. So look it up, learn about what it could mean, and ask your doctor more specific questions. Ask your friends if they've ever gotten these levels checked or this kind of imaging done, and compare results. Ask them what their doctor told them. Find a relevant subreddit and see if you can find more info from other people's experiences or perspectives. You gotta crowdsource that knowledge sometimes, while also having a good filter on there for the crap and the grifts. Ultimately, you have to somehow avoid the trap of, it's normal, you're fine, goodbye. If you still have the symptoms that prompted the doctor to run the test, and the test comes back normal, say, okay, that test was normal, what's next? What else could it be? Even if that's a normal result, is it right for me? Who else can you refer me to? You have to not let them off the hook. The vast majority of these doctors are good doctors and good people doing their best in a really broken system. Remind them that your symptoms have not gone away. Keep asking questions, even if they can't answer them. We're going to take a quick break and then come back with our other two questions.
Cause we never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped. All right, our next question is from Hallelujah on Instagram. And the question is, the MTHFR gene mutation, does it affect periods? And I have to start from scratch on this one. What is the MTHFR gene mutation? The MTHFR gene usually tells your body how to make the MTHFR protein. That's a protein you need to produce folate, which is a B vitamin. And you need folate to break down an amino acid called homocysteine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. If you can't break down homocysteine, it builds up in your body and causes problems. Without getting too deep into it, because I'm not a geneticist, this is not a genetics podcast, there are two common variants of the MTHFR gene. About 70% of people have one of these two variants. Now, because you have two copies of the MTHFR gene, having one mutation is not a big deal. But if you have the same mutation in both copies of your gene, it can cause problems. And some of those problems are really serious. Pregnant women with an MTHFR gene mutation might have a hard time processing folate, which could mean that their baby might have spina bifida or other neural tube complications, which is why folate is so often in prenatal vitamins. It can also cause serious problems like nerve damage or blood clots or high blood pressure, especially in people who have diabetes or another chronic condition. However, it does seem like the MTHFR gene mutation is going through a bit of a grifty phase. This gene mutation has also been blamed for things like fatigue and low energy levels, difficulty concentrating or brain fog, mood swings, anxiety, depression, hormonal issues, digestive problems. This exact list of symptoms is also what would have gotten you diagnosed with hysteria if this was 100 years ago. So I get some red flags up whenever I see this list of symptoms together. This is a list of symptoms that is very common with things like autoimmune disease or long COVID, whole system diseases and conditions that we don't understand very well yet. So I don't know, blaming fatigue and low energy, mood swings, anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating, and hormonal issues all on this one gene mutation? I don't know about that. Also, even if you find out that you do have this gene mutation, 2 copies of it, you can't do anything about it. There's no cure. They can't go in there and fix that for you. The only things they're going to tell you to do for it are get enough sleep, eat well, move your body, just generally take better care of yourself, and you'll feel better. And yeah, I bet if you start getting enough sleep and being really purposeful about eating better and exercising a little more, a lot of these issues like fatigue and low energy levels, brain fog, mood swings, and hormonal issues will probably improve. In fact, the American College of Medical Genetics has issued guidelines recommending against testing for these gene mutations. And there was recently a study that showed that these kind of iffy symptoms that had been associated with the MTHFR gene variations, they're more likely to be caused by gut imbalances and inflammation. And that's a good thing because we can fix those. We can't fix a gene mutation. Clinics and wellness companies are offering genetic tests to find out if you have these mutations, and they cost hundreds of dollars, when really you could just try to sleep more and eat well and take care of yourself. So the gene mutation does seem to be a real thing, but we don't exactly know what it causes. And a lot of the studies that have been done seem flawed and are not replicable. When it comes to how it affects our periods, I don't know. And I couldn't find anything about this. Anything that is going to make you feel run down or make your hormones go out of whack is also going to mess with your periods pretty bad. There doesn't seem to be really good evidence that the MTHFR gene mutation is causing those things. And it wouldn't matter if it was because you can't fix the gene mutation. So you may as well just take good care of yourself if you're noticing any of those symptoms. It's kind of like high cortisol levels. All the TikTok girlies want to sell you something to balance your hormones, tell you that you have cortisol face, that everything that's wrong with you is due to high cortisol. And if you just bought this thing or did their coaching plan, you would fix that and your life would be perfect. And that's just not true. Like, cortisol is real, and high cortisol does cause a ton of problems, which is why stress causes so many weird symptoms. And cortisol does get made out of the raw material that our other hormones are made out of, so when our cortisol is high, our other hormones tend to get out of whack. We're not supposed to be stressed out all the time. Like, that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that what they're selling you is going to fix the situation. So if you think you might have the MTHFR gene mutation and you're worried about how it's affecting your periods, the only thing you can do is take better care of yourself. And maybe take a multivitamin that has folate in it if you want to test that theory. Be safe out there. Don't get grifted. Our next question is, again, 2 questions. So many people are on the same page. I love it. This one from Tillor on Instagram. Why is each month so different? Length of cycle, intensity of flow, cramps, etc. Why do symptoms change? Never used to get sore boobs, now I do. And then from Floral Baby Design on Instagram. Why do some months I want to scream in pain and other months are like, not bad? I love this question. We are told over and over and over again, 28-day cycles are normal. Some people have these symptoms, some people don't. We are not told that probably every month is going to be a little different. And that is because our hormones are built to react to our environment. And our environment is always changing. We're not supposed to have the same exact experience every month. All the things you do during the month affect your hormones, which affect your period. And not just during the month. Your eggs are maturing in their follicles for almost a whole year. I went down a crazy rabbit hole on this one. You have things called primordial follicles in your ovaries that are like proto-eggs, and they get recruited to start growing. And it takes almost a whole year for them to actually get to the point of being an egg that can ovulate. But really, it's the last 3 months before that egg ovulates, that's when it's growing the most. If you had crazy bachelorette weekend 3 months ago, that could mess up your period now. And when I say mess up, I really just mean make it different than usual, maybe more painful, maybe heavier flow. Also, sorry to be the one to break it to you, but we're all aging. Every day, every month, every cycle, we're a little bit older. And that does affect the symptoms that we're feeling and the way that our flow works. When you start hitting perimenopause, we think our periods are going to slow down, but actually they could speed up. Another factor is ovarian hemorrhagic cysts, which I talked about a little bit earlier. They're little cysts that can develop on the ovary after ovulation. They can be totally normal and have no symptoms. Sometimes they hurt. They can hang around for months. If they're really bad or it's not actually a hemorrhagic cyst and it's getting bigger, you might need to get surgery to get it removed. But sometimes it's just going to lead to a month or 2 or 3 of slightly more painful periods, maybe some sharp pain when you ovulate. But that can vary from month to month and from cycle to cycle. And of course, we have to talk about stress. I know we're all sick of hearing that. We're not just talking about the kind of stress that's like, oh no, I have a big project due. Medically, stress is anything that puts unusual pressure on your system. And that can be something like a big deadline that is stressing you out, causing you to have anxiety or not sleep well or not take very good care of yourself. But it can also be something like an illness or an allergy or not getting regular meals or enough food. Anything that your body and your hormones interprets as something that could be threatening to your well-being or survival can cause a ton of changes in your hormones. Because your hormones are your body's signaling system. It's the way your body communicates about what's going on outside your body and how your body needs to adjust to handle that. It's supposed to react to what you're going through. And we don't understand the hormonal system all that well. We don't understand why some people's systems handle lots of crazy stressors fine without big changes to their hormones, and then other people are more sensitive. We do know that the more stressors somebody's system is dealing with at the same time, the more likely the hormones are to get dysregulated. So if you're dealing with an illness and a lot of work and an emotional thing that's really stressing you out, and you're moving, your hormones are gonna be out of whack. Travel is a sneaky stressor that I always forget about, especially travel to a different time zone. Our bodies and our hormonal systems were not built to cross 3 or 5 or 10 time zones in a single day. Having this huge change in our circadian rhythm, even 3 hours is a big change when it comes to when to fall asleep, when to wake up, what our bodies are supposed to be doing and the rhythms that they're in. It messes up our sleep, which messes up our hormones. Different hormone levels can also mean different symptoms. So the sore boobs that you were talking about in your question, that's because of higher estrogen. For more detailed info about this, go back and listen to Season 1, Episode 5, How Do I Balance My Hormones? Because our hormone expert gives a much better explanation than I can. And when we're talking about cramping pain and why sometimes it's so much worse than other times, I gotta go back again to Kate Clancy and her work on inflammation. Her lab found that higher levels of inflammation in general do lead to worse period pain. And that inflammation could be from something like endometriosis, or it could be from things like allergies, or an injury, or an infection, literally anything else your body is dealing with. If you remember how prostaglandins work, that when progesterone dips, prostaglandins are released, and they bind with receptors in the uterine muscle to tell the muscle to squeeze. If there's too many prostaglandins, and if they're telling it to squeeze too much, it might squeeze so much that oxygenated blood can't get through, and you essentially get a Charlie horse in your uterus. And it sucks. If your body is already dealing with inflammation, there's already a ton of prostaglandins circulating in your bloodstream. And when your body signals to release more prostaglandins, that can be a case of too many prostaglandins. That can mean not only your uterine muscles are cramping, but also you get worse period poops because the muscles in your colon and your bowels are also getting these signals to cramp from the prostaglandins. You might get nauseous because the muscles of your stomach are getting the signal to cramp. So if you're having a particularly bad period and you're like, what the fuck? Why is this period so much worse than my last one? The first thing I would do is take a look at your calendar. There was probably something going on, whether that was travel, an illness, Or, maybe the president sent military troops into your city in response to peaceful protests. Just a random example, something that made me have a weird period. And if you're like, Kate, there hasn't been a single month in the last 5 years where I haven't either been traveling or stressed out by something major or sick, then yeah, there you go. We don't live in a world that's good for our hormones, which is why so many people are trying to sell you stuff to balance them on TikTok. Thank you so much for these questions. If you would like to ask me some of these questions next time I put up a little question box, please follow me at Kate Helen Downey on Instagram or at Kate is Cramped on TikTok. Just a little personal update. I am getting endometriosis excision surgery in just a couple of weeks, and I literally wouldn't be getting this surgery if I hadn't done the podcast. So thank you. Please go join the Patreon to support us and to get our exclusive Patreon episodes. And I will see you next week for episode 2 of season 1.5. Cramped is hosted and created by me, Kate Helen Downey. Kelsey DeLonzo is our editorial producer. Sound design and mixing is by Kelly Kramerick at Maven Post Media. Cramped's incredible theme song is written and performed by Faraday. Our podcast art was created by Nicholas Shepard.
What's happening to your body, we don't know, because we've never really studied the female body.